Bread feels safe, soft, fragrant, a simple staple. But for seniors, the reality can be shocking. Hidden preservatives, mold spores, and underreported bacteria lurk in loaves you trusted. From chains caught with contaminated wheat to moldy sliced bread in stores, these brands betray what they promise. Today, we will reveal 9 bread brands you must avoid, and 2 that are genuinely safe. At number 9, the so-called classic Wonderbread, the loaf that built America's sandwiches, but now hides a moldy truth. For decades, Wonderbread sold nostalgia. White, soft, perfect for peanut butter and jelly or grilled cheese. The brand marketed itself as the bread that builds strong bodies. But behind the cheery packaging, inspectors have found problems that no senior should ignore. Soft and safe, or soft and spoiled. Let's start with mold. The FDA has cited Wonderbread plants for contamination issues. Consumers have posted photos of unopened bags with green fuzz crawling up the crusts. That's not a 2-week-old loaf forgotten in the pantry. That's mold showing up while the product is still sealed, still stamped with a fresh date. And then there's the sodium. One slice carries about 150 milligrams. 2 slices, plus sandwich fillings, and you're well over 400 milligrams in one meal. For seniors on heart or blood pressure meds, that sodium can quietly spike numbers that doctors spend months trying to control. More salt than your heart signed up for, hiding inside a loaf that looks harmless. But here's the real shocker. Wonder isn't just bread. It's a chemical cocktail. Preservatives like calcium propionate and monodiglycerides are baked in, not to make it healthy, but to make it shelf-stable. That fluffy softness you squeeze in the grocery aisle? That's science keeping the loaf from turning hard, not wholesome ingredients. A whistleblower on a food safety forum once joked, "It doesn't grow mold in the factory because it's already half chemicals." Funny, until you remember FDA inspectors confirmed contamination in multiple plants. Bread isn't supposed to outlast the week. When it does, you have to ask what's inside. Think about seniors with kidney strain. High sodium plus preservative load means the kidneys work harder to flush it all out. Pair that with the green fuzz that sneaks in anyway, and you're looking at a loaf that attacks from both ends, chemicals on the front, mold spores on the back. Would you still call it a safe staple if your toast carried more lab agents than nutrients? The betrayal is clear. Wonder sells the idea of tradition, but delivers a product that puts vulnerable people at risk. Bread should feed you, not test your immune system. So what's the fix? Swap it with sprouted grain options like Ezekiel 4-9. Those loaves have no preservatives, lower sodium, and actually carry the nutrients whole grains promise. Toast it, freeze it, make it last, without fearing what's growing inside. Name and shame, what's the worst loaf you've ever pulled from a bag? Drop it in the comments. Wonder Bread may still own shelf space, but it's lost consumer trust. It's not the icon it was. It's a mold risk wrapped in nostalgia. If you thought nostalgia was safe, wait until you see the brand that hides sugar in every bite. Sliding into number 8, Sara Lee, famous for softness, infamous for what it hides. Sara Lee markets itself as the family-friendly loaf. Soft, sweet, and supposedly wholesome. Perfect for toast, sandwiches, or a quick snack. The commercials lean on nostalgia, promising comfort you can trust. But behind the tender slices, inspectors and customers have found problems that turn this bread into more of a trap than a treat. Dessert bread or bloating bomb? Here's the betrayal. Sara Lee loaves often carry hidden sugars tucked into that soft bite. For seniors watching blood sugar or managing diabetes, that sweetness isn't harmless. It's a spike waiting to happen. Each slice adds up, and 2 or 3 sandwiches in a week can quietly push glucose levels higher than expected. And the yeast. Health inspectors flagged fermentation issues in multiple plants. Instead of steady baking, some batches showed yeast overgrowth, meaning the bread didn't just rise in the oven, it kept ballooning after packaging. Customers reported slices with odd textures, almost spongy, sometimes with trapped gas pockets that left a sour note beneath the sweet smell. Complaints of digestive upset keep popping up in consumer forums. Seniors described bloating, stomach cramps, even diarrhea after eating what was supposed to be easy bread. For people with weaker guts, this isn't just discomfort. It can mess with medication absorption or worsen existing health conditions. Picture it. You peel back the bag, breathe in the sugary aroma, but underneath there's a faint sourness. Not fresh sourdough sour, but a wrong kind of tang, like yeast that never stopped working. Every bite carries that risk, hidden by sweetness. Would you still call that family-friendly? The FDA has logged notes on Sara Lee's fermentation and sugar content. They're not headline-grabbing recalls, but the pattern is there. Too much yeast activity, too much hidden sugar, too many risks for seniors on restricted diets. A loaf that spoils your gut health while pretending to be comfort. An ex-customer on a review board wrote, "Soft at first but left me doubled over after 2 slices." That's not bread doing its job, it's bread becoming the enemy. Stick to certified low-sugar loaves. Look for labels that cap sugar at under 2 grams per slice and avoid enriched flours. Brands like Ezekiel or certain local bakeries sell simpler recipes that don't overload your gut. Ever opened a bag of bread and smelled something off before the date even passed? Share it below. Bet you've seen it too. Sarah Lee sells softness, but softness doesn't save you from sugar spikes and yeast gone wild. For seniors balancing health, it's not worth the gamble. And if sugar's the secret here, the next brand can grow mold before you've finished the bag. Number 7 goes to Nature's Own, the wholesome choice that spoils faster than a summer picnic. The packaging screams natural. The ads push words like real, pure, and fresh. For many shoppers, it feels like the safer pick, but grocery store employees and inspectors know the truth. This loaf can grow mold so quickly you'd think it was left on a windowsill in July heat. Nature's Own, or Mold's Playground? Reports show mold forming on some loaves just 3 to 4 days after purchase, even when stored in sealed bags at room temperature. That's not a one-off mishap. The inspector notes flagged early spoilage as a recurring issue in multiple stores. A slice that should hold until next week instead grows green freckles before your toaster even warms up. Store employees have described pulling entire shipments off shelves because fuzz appeared before the sell-by date. Customers complained of opening brand new bags to find sour odors and crusts with speckled blotches. Bread that should have been feeding families was tossed in the trash. Picture the scene. You open the bag, expecting a clean wheat scent. Instead, a sour whiff hits your nose, sharp and wrong. The crust carries tiny green blooms, spreading like a rash. That's not breakfast. That's a microbial science project on your counter. For most people, it's gross. For seniors, it's worse. Mold exposure can trigger respiratory issues, sinus infections, and digestive problems. Seniors on kidney meds or with weakened immune systems are especially at risk. What looks like a harmless speck can mean serious health setbacks. The FDA has not issued mass recalls for Nature's Own, but inspectors and store-level complaints point to a pattern. Poor shelf stability, batches that turn sour too soon, and branding that suggests "trust us," while the product itself betrays that trust. One store worker vented in a forum, "We'd unload pallets of Nature's Own, and within days half had mold spots. Customers yelled at us, not knowing it was the bread itself." That's not Nature's Own, that's neglect wrapped in plastic. Would you risk your health for bread that can't even make it through the week? The fix is simple. Skip wholesome branding and go local. Buy fresh bakery bread, then freeze it. Pull out slices as you need them. No preservatives, no surprise fuzz, and far less waste. If you want shelf stability without chemicals, freezing is your safest ally. Ever had mold pop up on bread way before the date? Bet you have. Name the brand in the comments. Nature's Own promises natural goodness, but too often delivers sour smells and spotted slices. Seniors deserve better than bread that spoils almost as soon as it's bagged. Want to stay ahead of food dangers and hidden risks? Hit subscribe now, so you don't miss the facts that could protect your health. Coming in at number 6, Pepperidge Farm. The bread that remembers, but not how to stay fresh. The packaging feels elegant. The branding whispers heritage, quality, and old-world craft. It's the kind of loaf you'd expect to sit proudly on a family table. But behind the pretty bag, there's a storage problem big enough to sour the whole brand. Farm fresh or farm failed? Here's the betrayal. FDA inspectors have flagged warehouse conditions where Pepperidge Farm loaves were left on damp pallets, exposed to moisture that bread should never see. Employees from distribution centers described stacks of loaves sitting too long, sometimes in poorly ventilated spaces. Instead of arriving crisp and fragrant, many loaves turned up stale, or worse, already flirting with mold. But here's the real shocker. Customers have bought Pepperidge Farm only to find a crust that cracks like old plaster, dry and flavorless, or bread that develops green fuzz within days. One shopper wrote, "The bag looked sealed, but when I opened it, the crust was brittle and the slices had spots." That's not artisanal charm. That's negligence hiding under fancy branding. And then there's the sodium. Pepperidge Farm clocks in at 170 to 190 milligrams per slice, depending on the loaf. 2 slices for a sandwich, that's nearly 400 milligrams before you even add cold cuts or cheese. For seniors managing hypertension, that's a hidden hit to blood pressure, every lunch raising the strain on the heart and kidneys. Picture the warehouse. Rows of loaves, plastic bags sweating in humid air, crusts absorbing that dampness. By the time they reach your counter, the farm taste is more like basement storage. Stale, clammy, and off-putting. Would you trust your health to bread that rots before the butter melts? Even staff on warehouse forums vented about improper handling. Pallets stacked against damp walls, trucks loaded without temperature checks. It's not about one bad day. It's a pattern. Bread that should feel like a treat instead feels like a gamble. And let's not forget, Pepperidge Farm sells itself as a premium product. You pay extra for what's supposed to be tradition, quality, and care. What you often get is a dry crust, a sour bite, and sodium levels high enough to make a cardiologist frown. So buy from small local bakeries. They bake fresh, often daily, and without the massive warehouse shuffle that kills Pepperidge Farm loaves. Freeze what you don't finish. You'll avoid the damp palate problem and get flavor that doesn't taste like storage air. Ever pulled a loaf out of the bag and felt it crumble before the toaster even heated up? Drop your story. Let's compare disasters. Pepperidge Farm sells nostalgia. But nostalgia doesn't save you from mold, staleness, or sky-high sodium. For seniors, this isn't farm fresh. It's farm failed. Think dryness was your worst problem? This next loaf sneaks in a sugar rush with every bite. At number 5, King's Hawaiian, the sweet bread that rots faster than a luau in July. It's sold as tropical comfort, a golden orange bag promising a soft, sweet roll that feels festive. Families buy it for parties, barbecues, or Sunday dinners. But behind that cheerful branding hides a recipe stuffed with preservatives, sugar, and a shelf life that fails in humid weather. Sweet treat or sugar spike? Let's talk numbers. A single King's Hawaiian roll contains around 5 grams of sugar. That may sound small until you eat 3 or 4 at dinner. Now you're hitting the same sugar load as a glazed donut. For seniors managing diabetes or blood pressure meds, that's not a roll. That's a glucose trap waiting to spike blood sugar and trigger bloating. But despite the heavy preservatives meant to keep it fresh, shoppers across humid states have reported early spoilage. Mold forming on the bottom of the bag, sticky slices clinging together, orange spots dotting the crust, the sweet smell you expect from fresh rolls turning sour overnight. It's like candy bread that turns into a science experiment before the week is out. And then there's the salt. A 2-roll serving packs around 230 milligrams of sodium. Combine that with the sugar, and you're stressing both heart and kidneys. Seniors with hypertension can feel the effects fast. Higher pressure, swelling, sluggish digestion. It's the exact opposite of what a comfort bread should deliver. Picture opening that glossy orange bag at a cookout. You expect warm sweetness. Instead, the rolls are clammy. The smell is too sweet, almost chemical. You pull one apart and see faint mold creeping at the seams. That's not luau magic. That's rot in disguise. Warehouse staff have even reported shipments with mold already visible, rolls stuck together from excess moisture. Customers on forums described buying fresh bags only to toss them out days later. It looked perfect in the store, but by day 3 the smell was off, and the rolls were sticky, one buyer complained. Would you feed your family bread that can't survive its own preservatives? The fix is simple. Skip the sugar bombs. Choose whole grain rolls with no added sugar. Local bakeries often make hearty dinner rolls that freeze well and keep their flavor. Unlike King's Hawaiian, they won't rot in the bag before you even get to the butter. Ever opened a bread bag expecting dinner and found a sticky sour mess instead? Name it in the comments. King's Hawaiian markets itself as a sweet tradition. But for seniors, it's an unhealthy mix of sugar, sodium, and spoilage risk. It's party bread that can ruin the party. But if sweetness fooled you, wait until you hear about a natural loaf that carries something worse. Number 4 goes to Arnold, Brownberry, and Oro Wheat, the 3 names selling one risky loaf. The bags look earthy. The fonts scream natural. The branding makes you think you're buying a safer, more wholesome bread. But audits tell a very different story. Behind those rustic labels, inspectors have found inconsistent baking, poor sanitation, and even traces of listeria. Natural or naturally dangerous? The FDA has flagged this group more than once. Reports point to contamination during processing, where equipment wasn't cleaned properly between runs. That's how listeria shows up. For a healthy adult, it's bad enough. For seniors, especially those on immune-suppressing medications, it can be deadly. According to the CDC, about 1,600 people in the U.S. get listeriosis every year, and seniors make up most of the deaths. That's not just bread going bad, that's bread becoming a health threat. Customers have opened sealed bags and found clammy slices sticking together, a musty smell rising before the toaster even popped. Bread should smell warm, yeasty, inviting. Instead, This one reeks like it's been trapped in a gym locker. The so-called wholesome loaf feels more like a damp rag in your hands. Whistleblower notes from inspectors mentioned poor quality checks. Batches weren't tested thoroughly, storage bins weren't sanitized properly. In one audit, cross-contamination risks were highlighted but ignored. When bread meant to be natural carries the same risks as deli meat left out overnight, something's gone wrong. Would you risk your health on a sandwich that comes with bacteria? For seniors with kidney issues or weakened immune systems, this is no small gamble. A few slices can mean stomach cramps at best, hospitalization at worst. And here's the betrayal. Arnold, Brownberry, and Oro Wheat charge more than generic bread. You're paying extra for what they market as safer and closer to nature. In reality, you're buying into marketing spin while inspectors log contamination notes in the background. Visually, the horror sticks. Slices with a clammy texture, a faint sourness under the earthy aroma, a loaf that looks hearty but falls apart like wet cardboard. It's bread that pretends to be farm fresh while it's rotting behind the scenes. The fix? Stick with verified listeria-free brands that publish inspection results openly. Sprouted breads and small-batch bakery loaves often test cleaner and carry fewer risks. And if you're shopping big-box brands, freeze half the loaf as soon as you buy it. Better safe than bacteria. Ever bought a loaf that smelled off the second you opened it? Bet you didn't expect it from a natural brand. Drop your story below. Arnold, Brownberry, and Oro Wheat sell trust on their packaging. But that trust collapses the moment you bite into a slice that tastes like damp air. For seniors, this isn't back to basics. It's back to bacteria. Bacteria was bad enough, but this next bread serves up an allergy risk right under the label. At number 3, Dave's Killer Bread, the loaf with an organic halo and a hidden record. The packaging screams clean, bold fonts, organic labels, even the story of reform and second chances baked into its branding. It feels rebellious yet wholesome, like the rock and roll of bread aisles. But behind that marketing sits a history of recalls for undeclared allergens and distribution centers flagged for contamination. Killer taste or killer allergens? Let's hit the facts. In the past decade, the FDA has issued multiple recall notices tied to Dave's Killer Bread. The reasons? Undeclared allergens, soy, sesame, and tree nuts. For seniors with allergies, this isn't a paperwork error. It's a hospital trip waiting to happen. Allergic reactions can spiral fast, especially in older adults already balancing medications. Even loaves labeled allergen-free were caught up in contamination scares. Inspectors visiting distribution centers found storage bins that weren't sealed, flour dust mingling between batches, and seeds sticking to conveyor belts that should have been scrubbed. That's how allergens slip through. And when the brand sells itself as safer and organic, the betrayal cuts deeper. Now picture it. You grab a slice expecting nutty, dense bread with those trademark seeds. Instead, you notice clumps where seeds are glued together in gummy patches. A sour smell lingers. Not fresh yeast, but something damp from poor storage. That's not nutrition. It's negligence in a wrapper. A staff forum post from a former distribution worker admitted that cleaning between runs wasn't always done right. Production had to stay on schedule. That means crumbs, seeds, and allergens bouncing from one loaf to the next. Would you risk an allergic reaction for a sandwich? The FDA estimates that food allergens send 200,000 Americans to the ER each year. Seniors make up a dangerous slice of that, since immune responses can be more severe. Add heart meds, kidney concerns, or blood thinners into the mix, and even a mild reaction can snowball into something life-threatening. And the price? Dave's Killer Bread costs more than most loaves in the aisle. You're paying a premium for organic safety, only to get stuck with recalls and contamination risks. It's like buying an airbag that only works half the time. The fix? Stick with breads that are allergen certified, often labeled as free from on packaging. Brands that run dedicated facilities, free from cross-contact, are safer for seniors and anyone with health concerns. Or go local. Smaller bakeries that can tell you exactly what goes into the dough are usually more transparent. Ever had bread that left you worried instead of full? Bet this one's on your list. Share below. Dave's Killer Bread sells rebellion in a bag, but the only rebellion here is against basic safety. It's not just seeds and grains. It's a gamble with allergens that can turn deadly. And if hidden allergens weren't bad enough, the next loaf can hit your liver. Runner-up at number 2 is Franz Bakery, the fluffy loaf that hides a moldy secret. On the surface, Franz loaves look like the softest in the aisle. The branding leans on family tradition and Northwest pride. The texture gets praised for being fluffy, but that comfort doesn't last. Because behind that pillow-like bite lurks fast-growing mold and preservatives that stress your liver. Fluffy or fungus-filled? Consumer complaints pile up across forums. Loaves going green in less than a week, even when sealed tight. One shopper posted photos of slices with fuzz creeping along the crust just 4 days after purchase. That's not freshness, it's fermentation. FDA records show that Franz relies on chemical preservatives like calcium propionate to slow spoilage. But studies link those same additives to liver stress when consumed over time. For seniors already juggling meds for blood pressure, kidneys, or cholesterol, it's one more burden the body doesn't need. Workers in warehouse forums admitted that bread was often stacked in humid corners on wooden pallets without proper airflow. Moisture plus sugar-rich dough equals the perfect mold nursery. One ex-employee joked that the bread aged faster than we did. That's not the family tradition anyone signed up for. Visually, it's enough to turn your stomach. You pick up a loaf that feels light in your hands, only to find the interior is gummy, dense in patches, with a stale perfume smell instead of fresh yeast. Pull back the slice and green fuzz clings to the crust like it's auditioning for a science project. Would you trust that in your toaster? For seniors, mold isn't just gross, it's dangerous. Mold spores can trigger respiratory issues, worsen asthma, and stress-weakened immune systems. Combine that with the preservatives that challenge liver health, and this soft bread can turn into a hard problem. The betrayal is clear. You pay for a trusted brand, expecting fluffy safety, but what you actually get is a loaf that can rot before you finish your first sandwich. And if you have to throw half the bag out after a few days, what exactly are you paying for? The fix is simple. Switch to lentil-based flatbreads, or even make your own quick pan breads. Lentil flour is high in protein, naturally low in preservatives, and easier on seniors managing meds. Plus, it freezes well. No green surprises when you open the bag. Ever bought bread that went bad before you even finished the milk? Drop your mold horror stories in the comments. Franz may market fluffy comfort, but comfort ends fast when the loaf stares back at you with green fuzz. For seniors, that softness can carry very real health risks. But the biggest offender is saved for last, and it's the giant behind half the loaves you see. And topping the list at number 1, Bimbo Bakeries USA, the empire loaf that's more mold than memory. This isn't just a brand, it's a machine. Bimbo controls half the bread aisle in America, owning names like Entenmann's, Sara Lee, Oro Wheat, and more. With reach this big, you'd expect ironclad quality. But what inspectors and insiders reveal is the opposite: moldy batches, high sodium, and sloppy labeling that leaves seniors at risk. Trusted giant or ticking time bomb? The FDA has cited Bimbo multiple times in the last decade. Recalls linked to mold contamination, undeclared allergens, and labeling errors show up again and again in federal records. A 2020 inspection even flagged mold growth in facilities where ventilation failed. When bread is produced at this scale, cutting corners doesn't just hit one store, it spreads coast to coast. Sodium levels in some Bimbo loaves push over 220 milligrams per slice. That's more than 440 milligrams in a simple sandwich. Seniors on blood pressure meds or with kidney strain are eating half their daily sodium allowance before the first bite of soup. Now picture this. You open a bag, ready for toast. The crust feels greasy instead of crisp. Drop a slice in the toaster, and instead of warm bread smell, you get sour steam rising, carrying hints of rot under the butter. That's not breakfast. It's a lab test gone wrong. A whistleblower report from production staff admitted schedules were so rushed that cooling times were skipped, trapping moisture in sealed bags. That shortcut fuels mold before loaves even hit store shelves. Workers joked it was bread that baked itself twice, once in the oven, once in the bag. Would you trust a company that can't slow down long enough to let bread cool? For seniors, these aren't small issues. Mold spores can inflame lungs. High sodium sneaks up on blood pressure. Labeling mistakes leave diabetics or allergy patients blindsided. This is bread as roulette, not nutrition. And the scale of betrayal? Bimbo is one of the largest bakery companies on earth. With billions in sales, they could afford cleaner facilities and stricter testing. Instead, speed wins. Your health loses. So what's the fix? Skip the mass-produced empire loaves. Sprouted grain bread from smaller bakeries or certified organic brands with transparent labeling are far safer. Ezekiel sprouted bread, for example, avoids preservatives altogether and supports heart and kidney health. Ever opened a loaf and found green spots smiling back at you? Name and shame below. Bimbo markets tradition and trust, but when the world's biggest bakery can't even get mold under control, the loaf isn't worth the wrapper. That wraps up the worst offenders. But don't worry, I've got 2 frozen options that actually keep their promises. First, safe pick, Ezekiel 4:9. Sprouted bread, proof that clean, simple loaves still exist. After 10 segments of mold, sugar bombs, and sodium overload, this one feels like a relief. Ezekiel 4:9 isn't mass-market fluff. It's made from sprouted grains, packed with natural fiber, and baked without preservatives. That means no hidden chemicals, no shortcuts, and no greasy crusts. Just bread that tastes and smells like bread should. Sprouted and safe. Each slice carries real grains: wheat, barley, lentils, millet, and spelt. Together, they create a dense, nutty loaf that fuels instead of draining. The sodium content is far lower than that of Bimbo or Franz, often under 75 milligrams per slice. That's a fraction of what the FDA lists in average commercial bread. For seniors balancing high blood pressure or kidney strain, that's a difference worth noticing. And the best part? It digests easier. Sprouted grains break down starches naturally, which means less sugar rush, no sudden blood sugar spikes, no crash later. Diabetics, in particular, find this type of bread a steady option that plays nice with insulin and medication schedules. You don't need preservatives when the food is made right. Customers often freeze Ezekiel bread, pulling out slices as needed. When thawed, you don't smell chemical perfume. You smell grain, yeast, and a roasted aroma that fills the kitchen like real baking should. No green fuzz spreading on day 5, no sour steam rising from the toaster. Whistleblowers? In this case, it's the opposite. Nutritionists and dietitians point to Ezekiel as one of the rare commercial breads that holds up to its promise. Instead of insider jokes about moldy warehouses, you hear praise for its transparency. Ingredients listed, nothing hidden. Would you call that boring, or would you call it peace of mind? For seniors especially, this bread offers comfort without compromise. It's gentle on digestion, easier on the kidneys, and it keeps salt intake in check. No extra preservatives stressing the liver, no label tricks waiting to backfire. And it proves that bread can still be honest. The contrast with brands like Bimbo or Franz couldn't be sharper. They offer speed and softness, but behind the wrapper lies mold and salt overload. Ezekiel offers density and chew, but behind that comes stability and trust. So what's the fix if you're tired of throwing out half a bag of moldy slices? Simple. Switch to Ezekiel, store it in the freezer, toast slice by slice, and you'll never again have to scrape fuzz off your sandwich bread. Ever switched from fluffy white bread to something denser and found it actually tasted better? Let us know below. Ezekiel 49 doesn't just sell bread, it sells a reason to trust the loaf again. And if you want soup done right, this next one will surprise you. And the final safe choice, Dave's thin-sliced organic 21 whole grains, the exception to their own rule. Strange, right? We just roasted Dave's killer bread for allergen recalls. But here's the twist. Their thin-sliced organic 21 whole grains version actually lives up to the promise. It's lighter, safer, and finally matches what the label says: thin-sliced and trustworthy. The key difference is standards. This line follows strict organic safety checks. No hidden soy slips, no sneaky preservatives. Each slice is leaner, clocking in at about 60 calories and only 115 milligrams of sodium. Compare that to the sodium bombs of Bimbo or Franz, where slices can pack 200 milligrams or more. For seniors watching blood pressure or kidney strain, that's a lifesaver. Nutritionally, it's dense without being heavy. You get 21 grains and seeds: oats, quinoa, millet, spelt, flax, layered into each bite. The texture feels hearty, not gummy. Toast it and you hear the crunch instead of smelling that sour warehouse steam. But here's the real thing. Unlike their bulkier loaves, this one holds shelf stability better. Customers and dietitians both note it lasts longer without turning into a mold experiment. It's proof that when you cut the gimmicks, bread can still be simple and safe. Whistleblower forums that once blasted Dave's for cross-contact admit this product line is different. It passed organic audits and allergen standards without the recalls that haunted their bigger loaves. That's not marketing fluff. That's inspectors signing off. For older adults, this matters. Allergens aren't just a nuisance. They can be fatal when mixed with meds or weakened immune systems. Thin slice lowers that risk while delivering steady fiber that helps digestion. No sugar spikes, no crash, no hidden gut bombs. Would you trust a smaller slice if it meant a safer loaf? Here's another plus: portion control. Those thick bakery slices from other brands can hit 120 calories or more. Eat 2, and you've blown past a healthy carb serving. With thin sliced, you get balance without sacrifice. Sandwiches feel filling, but not like you just swallowed a sugar pillow. It's a rare case where the brand corrected itself. Sure, the killer image still feels like overcompensation, but in this case, the bread itself does the talking. You taste grains, not chemicals. You smell roasted seeds, not that stale perfume we've been gagging over for half this list. So what's the fix here? If you still want the Dave's brand without the baggage, go for the thin-sliced organic 21 whole grains. It's one of the few packaged loaves that won't betray you after a few days in the pantry. Ever found a big brand that only gets it right with one product? Drop it in the comments. This bread may be thin, but it delivers thick trust. So yes, there are safe picks, but only if you know where to look. Not all bread is safe. Some can quietly harm your health. Subscribe now, and I'll show you which loaves to avoid, which are genuinely safe, and how to protect yourself every week.